Hey guys, this is Dr. Brent with the Legendary Chiropractor Podcast. This is season 16, episode 3. We have Dr. Ambrose Koll today. He is a graduate of Life University. He's a former professional chef. He is also a former student council president of Life University. He is currently practicing outside of Hilton Head, South Carolina, and he's going to pour into us tonight about mindset, the changes of how you go through transitions in life and how your mind develops in different stages. And he's going to pour into us on a lot of those concepts. So I'm really looking forward to tonight. But before we kick off, Dr. Ambrose, do you have anything you want to say to anybody?
Just welcome. Thanks for having me on, Brent. I'm excited to share tonight.
I'm excited to have you here, brother. Before we get kicked off, we're going to roll those sponsor rolls from our amazing sponsors that allow us to be able to be here and have this show and be able to make this happen.
Total Clinic Solutions is your go-to source for purchasing both brand new and refurbished chiropractic equipment, as well as phone support for repairs and maintenance. Call Derek and allow him to combine your wishes and his 23 years of chiropractic equipment expertise to find what's best for you and your patients at 704-622-4089 or head to TotalClinicSolutions.com now. True Chiro, helping chiropractors explode their practices and save more lives by shifting the perception of what they do from neck and low back pain to being about the brain and nervous system, leading to increased retention, more referrals, higher case averages, but most importantly, better patient outcomes for more than just neck and back pain. For more information, check out the link below, truechiro.org. Again, that's truechiro.org.
All righty. Those amazing sponsors. Ambrose, what's up, my man?
Not too much. Living the dream.
Hey, living the dream is correct. Man, practice being outside of school, being on the other end of that spectrum is just there's no words. It really is like you have to experience it. You got to live it. You can talk about it, you can dream about it, but until you're walking it, it's like it just doesn't feel the same.
Oh, absolutely. I think there was 6 to 9 month adjustment period right after graduation. It was really hard at first to let go of the student mentality.
hmm I feel like I'm going through that right now. I think I'm coming up right on 6 months. Well, my internship ended in September, so I'm really been a doctor for like 3 weeks. It feels like it's been way longer.
Oh, absolutely. It's it's humbling because people trust you with so much. And at the same time you feel like maybe a little bit of an imposter because you're new and you're kind of getting the ropes. Um, so really for me, that was a huge part was just getting my mindset correct after graduation.
hmm Yeah, I'm going through that right now. It definitely feels there's a bit of like an imposter syndrome attached to being a student. You're a student for 7, 8 years. If you do everything from undergrad through grad school, and it just becomes you have to redesign who you are as a doctor. You got to reemerge. Like I think last episode I talked about um, the butterfly going into a cocoon, or a caterpillar going into a cocoon and emerging as a butterfly. Chiropractic school is kind of like that metamorphosis process. You go in as this person very raw, and you come out very refined, and then you just keep refining and keep refining and keep refining.
Yes. I remember a doctor when I was a student was like, it doesn't get easier, it just changes how hard it is. From class loads to now you got charts and patients and marketing and reinventing yourself if that's needed. Even if it's not needed necessarily, you still want to figure out what your most authentic self is. Because when you're trying to go after your target market, if you're putting on a persona, they're going to sniff that out. And they're going to tell, oh, this guy's just trying to put on a show to get a certain type of person, right? And it may not even be something that you're aware of. You might just subconsciously think you need to be this type of person, and you're kind of fooling yourself along with everybody else. Everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely go through like a conversation, like what type of doctor do I want to be, and how do I want to serve, and like what do I want to include in practice, and what do I not want to include in practice, and then you change your marketing strategies and see how they work versus they don't work, and it really is. Uh, Sid always talked about you have your service hand and you have your business hand, and they should never meet. And
Yeah.
it makes sense. It's like after being in practice for a while, or a while, it's like 3 weeks, right? I'm so seasoned. Um, but it's just you recognize the business hand definitely does not meet the service hand because though they can potentially be the same conversation. They are also separate conversations.
Yeah, because how many of us get into this because we want to help people,
Everyone, hopefully.
right? So many times I've had somebody be like, I don't know if I can make that price. And immediately my heart's just like, nah, I'll do it for free. Like, I want to give it to you so much. But yeah, you have to have that business conversation.
hmm
And
Yep.
how many people are affording like $800 iPhones? Can
Yeah.
they really not afford it? Or are they just being weird with their money?
Yeah, and it definitely comes back to people are going to be able to afford what they want, right? Whatever they make
Hmm.
priority. And that's one of the biggest things like I run into is like, getting people to understand the importance of getting their spine checked, making sure that they're building it into a priority into their life. That way, ultimately, it's going to affect their health. So it's a shift in mindset. It really is. You have to shift people out of a narrative that they may have been in their entire life, just so you can have a conversation authentically with them because they're kind of trapped in certain paradigmical thought.
Yeah, my parents are a big one. They, from the generation where you went to the grocery store and everything was pretty much the same, you just have to try to find the cheapest item, right?
Mhm.
Whereas now, like I was a chef, I got into this really at the nutrition level first
Right.
and trying to explain to people that spend a little bit more money on healthy food, and then you won't have to pay so much in bills later.
hmm
And it's a paradigm shift because initially they're like, no, I want to save as much money as I can every month, not buying all this expensive food. But at the same time, I'd rather have healthy food that I really enjoy every day rather than, have a new car or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It's fascinating. That, there's a myth that eating healthy is expensive, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's expensive, but it does take effort. You do have to accumulate your new spices that are organic or get them naturally from a flea market or something, but that's just effort required. And I feel like a lot of time people just want to go to the store and get the fastest and most available convenient thing versus going and getting like grass-fed beef or organic butter or ghee, or changing your oils, just simply changing away from olive oils and canola oils to maybe a higher, like a fat, I don't know, what is like a avocado oil. You use avocado oil because it doesn't smoke, because it creates stranded
Mm.
nuts whenever you transition to a smoke. It's simple nutrition hacks, which as a chef moving into the health paradigm, being able to bring your vast understanding of how food chemistry works, and then be able to explain to people how to properly eat, get the proper nutrients, how to prepare their food. Um, I feel like there's a lot there you can unpack and really deliver.
I've always dreamt of having like a commercial kitchen I can do some cooking lessons and stuff like that out of.
Mm,
Future plans.
yeah.
But that is the misconception. Because if you buy packaged food, then the health food industry has kind of like taken advantage of where you're at and charged you more.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're just trying to eat healthy, you can prepare all your own food, and it's fairly cheap. It's really just about time invested.
Yeah, it's meal prepping has been really big for me. Just like throughout the week, I cook once or twice a week, and I have my food for 3-4 days. And I've been trying to teach that to some of my patients, and I don't know why I get resistance on that. I'm like, just sit down and cook extra food. You cook once, cook extra food, then you have extra food for at least 2 days.
True. You're also dealing with everyone's first addiction or substance abuse, maybe. Because a lot of people learn how to satiate their emotional state with food. It's one of the first things we're allowed as kids. So that's what I've found in the past few years. Every time I try to help people cook better, eat better, get their nutrition on point, they have to be ready for that change. Because most people don't want to make that change.
So do you think that's just an inability of letting go of attachment, or do you think that there's some emotional wrap that's tied into that people just aren't willing to let go of? Because I feel like a lot of times whenever people are per se stuck in a pattern, they don't want to let go of that pattern. There's an attachment to an emotional attachment or something that they just kind of get clung to and get stuck. And that's where the transition, like I went through this as a student, where I was eating like a bodybuilder all the time. It's chicken, rice, and veggies. And it's like I ate like that for years because I didn't know any better. I was like watching them, looking at all the bodybuilders, and they're eating chicken, rice, and veggies. I'm gonna eat chicken, rice, and veggies. Then you realize food is supposed to be delicious whenever you eat it, so you should cook it properly.
Ideally.
And I started cooking better. I started taking cooking classes whenever I was in Chiro school, and now just being able to have different expressions on the plate or your palate. Like, how can we advance the conversation of being able to make meal prep and getting all the nutrient density that we want into our patients or into their hands, and ensuring that they're going to be able to take that home and actually apply it? Because I feel like the application process is the hardest part for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really is. I would probably say, at least in my experience, it's easiest to do that as you go along with care. Because what you're really dealing with as chiropractors, you're seeing a sympathetic state played out with, it's almost this, not really defense mechanism, but a craving for the hard shit we had to do. Excuse my French. Like, my life is so hard. These treats or food items that I really love are my reward. And so somebody in a sympathetic, dominant 24/7 state is not going to be willing most of the time to let go of those rewards until they get themselves out of that sympathetic state.
And that's really interesting because I find if you follow Dr. Andrew Huberman, he talks about dopamine a lot. And I've been diving into the dopamine dependency and dopamine deficiencies, as well as the patterns that follow. So like getting addicted to food can be something with our prefrontal cortex, how we contextualize the narrative that we tell ourselves around that food and how we give ourselves that reward. So if we're rewarding ourselves, this dives into more psychology of different conditioning patterns. But if we're rewarding ourselves, reinforcing negative behavior, negative feedback loops with rewards, then we're contextualizing it where we're giving ourselves something, we're giving ourselves that dopamine, that reward, and ultimately it's not reinforcing good behaviors.
Yeah. I mean, and that plays well into the first takeaway is, especially for us as doctors, if we're going to be taking care of these people, we also need to get ourselves out of that sympathetic state.
Mm-hmm.
And I found in my own personal journey, I almost was diabetic when I was in my early 20s. And that's kind of what sent me on this health journey to eventually get to chiropractic. And I found I was using chocolate, sweets, donuts, all these things to placate the stress I felt from having to do a bunch of stuff I really didn't want to do. Say things that I didn't really want to say. Put on faces when I felt something different. Like, if we can learn to let go of all the stuff we don't really need, that's not really who we are, then we can start to drop out of that sympathetic state, because we're not stressed so often trying to put on a show for everybody, and you kind of let go of the expectation, mainly from yourself, to like be a certain person or have this certain vision or image that we portray to everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about meditation and breathing and yogic practice. And do you find that using different practices like that allow you, maybe like mindfulness meditation is something I'm looking into, uh, being able to let go and to let go of perhaps that persona that we're projecting and just get quiet inside of ourselves to be able to find more authentic conversations so that we don't try to mold ourselves to our environmental factors?
Yeah, those are definitely helpful. I think learning mindfulness just in our day-to-day life is important first. Because for me, I still have trouble sitting still. If
Same.
I'm in a lecture, movie, anything engaging, I can totally sit still. When you turn all that off and I'm trying to meditate, I have a really hard time sitting still.
Mhm.
And so my first step before I even got to meditation was really just to notice the habits that I kept choosing and notice when they stressed me out.
Interesting.
Because my constant craving for sweets and stuff like that, I didn't necessarily notice that it even stressed me out at first. Really, that was the next day when I felt like crap. But it was even just like you get done with that donut and you
Mm-hmm.
immediately want another one.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't have any effect. It didn't take away the craving. It didn't even dent it. So, like, do I want to keep repeating this habit even though it's obviously not giving me anything,
Right.
you know? So that was kind of my first step of learning to let go of what isn't me, was noticing what I kept doing and just being aware that certain things I enjoyed and certain things stressed me out or didn't really do anything for me. And at that point, you're not pressured to do anything because you're just taking stock of what your life consists of.
Right. It's interesting because I've been one to stress eat whenever like midterms and finals were coming around. Uh, it's either you don't eat or you do eat. It's not really anything in between. It's copious amounts of caffeine and snacks, or you
Mm-hmm.
eat a lot, sleep, and hopefully you do well. Make sure you study. Always study. Don't procrastinate. Procrastination will burn you in practice. Get rid of that habit as soon as you can. If you're a student and you're listening to this, no matter where you are in the program, uh, get rid of procrastination. It doesn't need to exist in practice because you need to show up your best version every day. And procrastination doesn't allow that to occur.
Yeah, and usually procrastination is a sign that you're doing some things that you don't really enjoy. And in school, that's to be expected a little bit. None of us like school. Maybe 1% of the class does.
Maybe your first year, year and a half, but by the end of your second, third year, you're burnt.
Yeah. Everybody likes learning, but nobody likes school.
Not 8 years of it. Well, real quick, we're going to take a short intermission. We're going to let those other amazing sponsors that we have play through, letting everyone know about how we can make this profession better and how they're able to serve us and allow this podcast to happen.
Imaging Services' primary business is chiropractic solutions. With over 45 years in the industry of helping chiropractors, Michael Tokash offers free consultations on building your business. In the past year, Imaging Services has installed over 100 X-ray machines and digital X-ray systems in over 42 states across the United States. For more, head to theimagingservices.com.
Yes, our sponsors are amazing. We love our sponsors. If anyone's interested in sponsorship, make sure you reach out. Also, there was something we talked about earlier that I really want to bring up. I feel like this would be a great segue into the other end of the conversation that we were talking about. But ego death and ego birth. This is something that I didn't really understand. I didn't really have a good understanding of at all coming into chiropractic school, and I started to experience these quote unquote ego deaths. And really it was just a shedding of self. It was like removing of a layer, getting a little bit deeper, getting to know myself a little bit deeper, allowing myself permission to go deeper and ultimately become more of an authentic version of myself by shedding those layers, like you were talking about the persona, becoming this person for other people who are trying to be a certain image or a certain type of person. And that's really just a projection of a persona trying to fit in. In school, you go through that like every quarter. I feel like you go through different clubs, different classes, different seminars. You have different friends like every quarter just about. It's a crazy time. Honestly, it's amazing. But going through that, Dr. Ambrose, how do we build a life of joy around all these stressors in our lives? And getting out of school, you don't per se lose a stressor. You gain more stress because now you have more responsibility and you have more opportunity to show up, better every day. But how do we build a life that we're building it around true joy and we're being honest with ourselves and we're allowing that to occur? How do we get to that state? How do we find that?
It's a great question. I think part of it is kind of letting yourself go through cycles of ego death and ego birth, because ego itself is not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The ego is what keeps us as individuals healthy, safe, protected, fed, all those things, right? The base needs. And it's your one and only advocate for those things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it gets toxic because we let other people influence what our egos should be or should be protecting or advocating for. And there's a lot in ego death. So much spirituality is based around that. It's how can I let go of self and let myself dissolve into the divine consciousness or whatever frame they put it in. But one of my favorite things that was brought to my attention was the idea that the biggest ego trip is losing your ego. Because once you lose your ego, then you're comparing yourself to all the other enlightened individuals, and then that becomes an ego trip in and of itself. It's like who can have the least ego.
It kind of is, huh?
Yeah, so you can't ever run away from it. It's kind of like how you can be enlightened, you can meditate on a mountain, yet you're still in the world. You're still hungry, you still have needs, you still have all these things.
Mhm.
So learning how to see what innate really wants in yourself is going to help you start to build that ego, that healthy ego. Because for me, I have a hard time saying no. I love to help people. It's one of the reasons I got into this. But in my personal life, that can show up as conflict because I can overcommit. Then I don't follow through. And then I ruin, or maybe not even ruin, but just I harm relationships with people that I want to build relationships with. And that gets complicated because it's like, how do you honor who you are while still allowing yourself to be selfless?
Right.
So it's kind of a paradox, but really it's about cycles because you let yourself go through a winter where you kind of shed a lot of stuff, and then you let yourself have a summer where you're building a lot of your life. And being a new doctor is a great opportunity because you're probably going to a new place. Even if you're returning somewhere, you're a doctor. You're put on a pedestal and you're this figure now. So you get to let go of all the stuff that you don't want in your life anymore. And you get to listen to your innate, and then you build the activities and the style of practice that honor who you really are and that you find joyful.
Mhm.
Because like for me, I love teaching. Through all my careers, even being a chef, I love teaching my staff and I love teaching my patients. So for me to go to a style of practice that's 2 minutes with every person, and I'm really just adjusting them and I'm not spending any time consulting with them,
Mhm.
that's not going to fulfill me. That's me trying to be somebody else or some other version of what chiropractic should be. Whereas I really like spending time showing people how to move and talking to them about cooking and nutrition and all these passions I have. And people respond well. It's not that like it's wrong that I spend extra time with people. I have a lot of people that are appreciative because they're like, every time I'm with you, I learn something.
Well,
And that's one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten.
what is it? Doctor means educator or teacher.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I feel like a life coach every day in the office, talking to people because I'm like talking about their life, talking about their mindset, talking about their nutrition, exercise, different stretches. It's like how we can do things and make their life better, make it easier. It really is like you're a coach. At the end of the day, you're coaching people into health.
Mm-hmm. And getting out of that sympathetic state, that dysfunctional state, a nervous system that's dysregulated, you're really helping people go through a little bit of ego death and helping them build the healthy ego.
Mm-hmm. I like that healthy ego. I've never heard of healthy ego before. Um, because the ego, a lot of people have the misconception that ego is a bad thing. I think that you did a great job defining that it is not a bad thing. I always look at it from the psychological perspective. The ego is developed from 0 to 7, and it's basically the information that we get as a kid, and that's how we develop our ego. Then based off of reinforcement um, throughout life, through different interactive experiences, those habits that we create, or those experiences, those responses that we develop from an early childhood, they either get broken down and they go away, or they get reinforced, and sometimes negatively reinforced or positively reinforced. But ultimately, you go to a point, I feel, that some things just may no longer be needed for the next step of the journey, the next chapter of the book. And You have to go through a process of just letting that go and shedding it and dropping it off and becoming a better, newer version of yourself. But you're really just giving yourself permission to continue to evolve.
Hmm.
And I really feel like that's how I look at it is, it's a state of evolution. It's a state of adaptation. If you're not adapting, you can't evolve. You're stuck in the past. You're stuck anchored to something that's dragging you and not allowing you to transition into, whatever you're trying to do and show up your best version. And I've experienced a lot of ego death. And then today I got introduced to the thought process on the other end of the spectrum, ego birth, which as a student, I feel like I went through as a student. I built my ego up. I got confident. I was a good adjuster. I knew my clinical skills, my orthos, my neuros. I could do all my student stuff. And then you get out here in the real world, and it's like, no, you don't need any of that. They're like, but don't forget this. It's like, and so you have to go through the ego death process of being a student to being a doctor. Then you have to ego birth yourself back as a new doctor.
Mm-hmm. It's all part of life. You can't run away from any of it. You're never there. You're always getting there.
I love that you say you can't run away from it, because I feel like that's the excuse a lot of people give is a way for them to get out of the current situation and go back to their comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it's easier.
Included. Right, it's easy to run away because you can go back to what's easy and then what you know versus what could be.
Well, so a healthy ego. We talk about in mental health having boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a healthy ego, having boundaries. As a child, I was the middle child, and often I was the confidant. So my mom would basically confide in me all the stress she was under, all the things she had to do, all these things. So for me, as a child hearing that, my ego was built around making sure I wasn't a burden to other people. Because if I could not be a burden to my mom, then I got love. And so I carried that on to my adult life, never had any boundaries. It's hard for me to say no because I didn't want to disappoint people or let them down or be a burden. And it was all this expectation trying to make everybody happy when you can't do that. You can't make everybody happy. You can only make a certain set of people happy. Or rather, you can't even make them happy, but your expression can bring joy to a certain spectrum of people because they resonate with you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you went down that path, because I felt like, because I didn't get the reassurance from my father, that I was constantly seeking other people's approval and their acceptance and their reassurance. So I was looking for that externally, and it took me 32 years to figure that out. And then I finally changed the narrative to, I'm doing things for me. I'm not doing them for other people. Other people may benefit from the things I do for myself, but it has to be about you. You have to fill your own cup.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
well, and how beautiful that really the imagery of a phoenix, the ego death, the ego birth, is very much rooted in neurology and human adaptability. Because, like, we can have these abstractions and look back on our life and see what's serving us and what's not. How many other animals have such a developed nervous system that they can actually do that? And then we can choose what patterns, what neurological circuits we don't want anymore and let them die. Like, literally, the neurons shrivel when they're not used, or at least the axons anyway, the connections. And so then you destroy that neural circuit. You have a grieving process because that always hurts when you destroy stuff. And then you build a different connection, a different way of being.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the concept of like neuroplasticity and changing how our brain perceives information. It's like a lot of prefrontal cortex, hippocampus, amygdala, fear conditioning. Are you familiar with amygdala hijacking?
Not that phrase.
No, essentially, it's where the hippocampus and the limbic system it over essentially tells the amygdala to respond to a threat, and that stored responses in the amygdala. So the hippocampus requests information from the amygdala. Amygdala gives said response that's stored out to the body. And then, so if you're afraid of a spider and your auntie was afraid of a spider, and so you acquired the stimulus of freak out whenever you see a spider, that's a stored response to a threat. So your amygdala sends that into the brain and it goes response, right? Or threat, response. And then it gives you that the craziness to freak out over a spider, which you're now reinforcing that feed loop that ultimately is really unnecessary. But the fear state is conditioning you to do that. And your prefrontal cortex can override your amygdala and actually cause that fear state to occur without a threat. So, like PTSD, anxiety, and depression comes a lot from how we contextualize and tell stories and how we talk to ourselves in our mind. So, thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Thoughts, how we think about ourselves, we think about others, and just how we think in general. That's going to build conditioning neurologically that can override and cause a lot of unnecessary fear responses and fear to anything. It creates a large amount of anxiety and ultimately depression, which then causes, with COVID and everything else, you see people locking themselves away. That's all conditioning.
I would say that's probably one of the major things I see every day. How many people are like stressed out all the time because they literally don't have a conscious control over what they stress about. Like, you can't ever run away from stress. Like, we're human beings. We're in this world. We'll have stress. It's the adaptability that we're going after.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see is everybody's in that ramped up cycle of like, oh, I got stressed because of this. I had this reaction because of this. It's all knee jerk. It's that programming.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't know how to get themselves out of it.
Get your spine checked.
Hell yeah. Hit that reset button.
I mean, it's like it really is like you have to get your spine adjusted. You have to get adjusted. It resets the neurology. It's going to be able to reprogram things that aren't working properly. And um, I didn't know what I was getting into whenever I got into chiropractic school. And then now that we're here on the other side of it, and we have all this vast information of how the body works and communicates, um, it's fun. It's fun to be able to help people and walk them through the steps to recovery and to heal. And it really is the best. This is the best job in the world.
Well, because like we adjust them and we get adjusted, and our nervous system has an opportunity, a window, a portal to realign itself in a more healthy way. And then at the same time, as people get adjusted, as I've gotten adjusted, my thoughts change. I start adjusting my nervous system in different ways than just the adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Just the adjustment. So it's like the food that you eat, the people you surround yourself with, the mentality changes, the search for joy, the knowing that you can have a vastly better life than you have right now. If you just work on it, learn about yourself, and be vulnerable and have boundaries, then like, I don't know, it's so fun. You're adjusting the nervous system in so many different ways, emotionally, mentally, physically. sometimes spiritually, if you get to have those conversations with patients.
Yeah, I mean, it's so profound because you're affecting so much. You're affecting the biochemistry, you're affecting the neuroendocrinology, you're affecting the biomechanics, you're affecting, the direct physiology and how the body's functioning overall. Like, I mean, you're directly influencing the entire machine
Mm-hmm.
through a singular adjustment of a segment of the spine. Like, that's sexy. I mean, no way you look at it. It's just
And there's so many different ways that you can do that. That's what I love about chiropractic is there's so many different techniques that as you go through this ego death and ego birth, you get to choose what vehicle of chiropractic you best exemplify or that you want to give the most. And it all helps people because you're really interacting with the body in any way is addressing the nervous system. Because if it controls everything, then anything you interact with is going to interact with the nervous system.
yeah, afferent communication, safety pin cycle. I mean, you break it down Barney style. Information in, processing, information out.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, Dr. Ambrose, my man. This is why I love talking to you. I love your brain. I love the conversations. You always have so much great information. Where can our
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, I always hype you up. Where can our listeners find you?
If you're in South Carolina, near Hilton Head, I'm at Rooted Living in Bluffton. Otherwise, digitally, I'm really just on Instagram. It's my handle's dr.ambrosekoll, one word, and you can find me there.
Excellent, and that's AMBROSE, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you guys are doing something really awesome down there at Rooted. You got the cold shower, you got the IR, you've got a lot of the exposure modalities to truly transform a person's life, as well as all the chiropractic care and the training.
Oh, yeah. You got to challenge people.
I love that mindset. Right? Mindset's everything.
Mm-hmm. And when people are, I haven't forced anybody, but when people are like encouraged that they're stronger than they think, it's amazing to watch them react because they're like, wow, I actually handled that well. And I feel great. I was just in 40-degree water. That sucks.
It does like every time. It doesn't ever really get better. At least for me.
I'm day 15,
15?
doing it in a row.
How long are you sitting in there?
It's fairly easy. 5 minutes.
Wow, my hat's off to you. Maybe one day when
But as soon as I go back to 3 times a week, it's hard.
3 times a week. Oof. Yeah. You gotta do it every day. You just get it done. It's part of it.
Pull the Band-Aid off.
Well, my man, a couple of takeaways from our talk tonight. I want to dive in and we talked about a little bit about imposter syndrome. We talked a little bit about persona versus being authentic. Food being a major addiction that leads to dopamine dependency based off of emotional contextualization. How we think about, talk about, and the stories we create about our food and the things that we put into our body. That can dive into nutrition, that can dive into supplements, that can dive into substances. All of those potentially could be toxins or nutritious value for our bodies to use, and so our nervous system ultimately be able to use to build and have to build inside the body. But we talked about letting go. We talked about ego death. We talked about ego birth. We talked about that phoenix. It's always the phoenix rises from the ashes. You have the ego death and the ego birth and the phoenix. I really like that representation and symbology. So I might steal that. You better copy.
I think it's Jordan Peterson. That. So steal it from him.
Okay. Well, it's
No, Joe Dispenza. It was Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's another profound individual. But my man, it looks like that is all the time we have tonight. But I am so grateful to have you on here. Thank you for pouring in, helping to make the profession a better place, and thank you for allowing yourself to just become legendary.
Thank you for making me legendary.
Hey, as always, my man.
Appreciate it.
It's
Hope everybody finds this helpful.
All right, my man. We will catch you next time.
Later. Sounds good. Have a good night.